and we are back again with another episode of We Got That Smoke with none other than Dr. Amos Wilson.
It's a struggle over scarce resources. The black man is on the point of extinction if we are not careful as a people. Why is there so much violence out here between us? And there are many reasons, but one of the major reasons is that the black man is no longer of great value in this society. In other words, his use is diminishing rapidly. Now, what do we mean by that? You know, we pat ourselves on the back about how we survived slavery, right? Oh, we survived slavery and we praised to the Lord and he got us through. Well, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But you also survived slavery. We also survived slavery because we were a valuable commodity. The white man didn't fill out insurance forms and finance these ships and all these other things just to bring you to America to kill you. He brought you to America to keep you alive. And it was in his interest as an investment property to maintain your life. So beside the Lord seeing about us staying alive, there was some white folk who also saw about us staying alive. Because if we weren't alive, who was going to tend the plantations and do the other kind of thing? At one time, a black slave was much more valuable sometimes than a free Irishman. Yes, definitely. Because there was an investment there. There was wealth in these people. You understand? And therefore, it was in the interest of many of these masters to maintain the life of our people. And in this sense, then, we were exploited, you see, because we produced value. This continued right up until after the Second World War, when we were hired in their industries and all these other things to continue to produce and add to this country's strength. But now let's look at this situation today and ask ourselves, in this day of automation and so forth, is the black man any longer needed in this society? Can this society survive without him? You see, now that these companies, you have companies now that find it easier to send information to Ireland and Scotland and other places, have that information processed over there and brought back over here. It costs them less to do it that way than to hire and train people in this country to do it. McGraw-Hill has all of this magazine subscription information processed in Ireland. Because those people over there have a direct connection to their computers right here in New Jersey. So they talk to each other as if they're in the same room. And they pay these people $11,000 a year or less than that. And for the same kind of work, they'd have to pay us $20,000 or $30,000. Now they got people doing the work of MBAs that are paid $45,000. They're paying people in Ireland, the Philippines, and other places $20,000 or less to do the same work. In other words, then the New World Order involves the fact that the United States is now arriving in the position where it can hire people anywhere in the world. It does not have to hire them within its own borders. And otherwise, it also can import them into its country to do its work, which is one of the reasons why they feel no compulsion anymore to invest in the education of black people. If you then read the history of this country, you recognize that something is coming. Why was the Indian destroyed? In good part because he was economically useless. And his destruction did not represent a loss from their point of view. We are moving toward that position of economic uselessness. And if history serves us right, that is followed by decimation. And ultimately, if it is not followed by direct decimation, which is occurring too, it follows by the twisting of the mentality of our people in such a way that we literally begin to kill ourselves and to destroy ourselves. That's why the subtitle of my book is The Psychodynamics of Black Self-Annihilation in Service of European domination. The black-on-black criminal is an ally of white domination. He is a mercenary for white folk. As a matter of fact, though, and in a sense then, instead of the white man having to lynch you directly, he will use your own hands to do it. But frankly, that is not really new in the history of black people, is it? As a matter of fact, when we look at the history of imperialism, we see a situation where Africans under the captaincy of Europeans were used to fight other Africans to conquer African territory. Where Africans from the Caribbean were used to maintain European territory in Africa. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, this imperial system has used black men against black men throughout its total history. And so consequently, what we see here today of black men killing each other is but really a dramatic example of what has been going on all the time. And it dramatizes the very nature of imperialism. Because the very nature of imperialism means that the subordinate group must be used to operate against its own interest. People do not build an empire to favor the ones conquered. They build an empire to favor themselves. So therefore, the one conquered must be used against themselves. That's what imperialism is about. See, there's some of you who out here are deceived. Some of you out here deceived. You know, you look at old Thomas, he's nominated. You look at a few other Negroes and they're moving up into society, and you swear America's getting better. Remember this, ladies and gentlemen, about imperialism. Usually imperialism is a situation where a small, relatively small population is ruling over a large population. Usually the imperial group is much smaller in population and so forth than the people it rules over. Which means then it reaches a point where it has to recruit from its subordinate population to maintain control of its empire. Do you understand what I'm saying? And therefore, some people in the subordinate population will move up in the system. And we will give them some power. So the movement of our people up in this system and their gaining of a little power doesn't imply that the system is dying. It can imply that it is well and alive, that it has just reached the point where it is recruiting from our own ranks to work against us as a people. And therefore, both in the bourgeois level and on the level of the streets, the black man is at war against himself in the interest of imperialistic racism. This is what you have here, and you got to escape this. What I can't understand, God sat around here and made all of these different ethnic groups, and then we make it holy to ignore it all. You know, really, you know, to me it's a type of blasphemy, you know. You made all these colors, but you know, let's forget about all of this. Identity is based on some degree of what? Similarity. Individual interests are protected by social organization. And on some level, some group, even if they were in the same ethnic group, find some basis for similarity and some basis on which to organize as a group to protect their interests. But what they're trying to tell you is to lose any basis and foundation for connecting with anybody. But that's not the way the real world operates at all. Not at all. And now what do we have going over here? The European system is in disarray. East Germany is soaking up the wealth of West Germany. So the Russian Empire is collapsing. And what do you see coming out of here? An intense increase in what? Racism in Europe. An increase of racism over the world, ladies and gentlemen. Because as the pie shrinks, as the possibilities shrink, people will tend to move in terms of their ethnicity and operate based on I told people years ago that integration in America could only work in an expanding economy. It's not moral. People are holding hands. It's about what? An expanding economy. We got a lot of jobs, we'll let you have a few. We'll bring you up. We don't have any jobs, we're going to cut you out. I told you before, ain't no book, ain't no law in the book, civil rights law in the book or in the Constitution. It's going to make a white man feed your child before he feeds his own. I don't care how many books you got or laws you got or whatever you got. In the end, they're not going to feed your children before they feed their own. Only sick Negroes feed other people's children before they feed their own. Yeah, this is the thing. And so as this strength, other groups are going to get a part of this pie. And you're going to have to face the fact then that as you lose these jobs out of industries, and this is a lot of why the violence is going on, Detroit being completely de-industrialized almost, you see. And as these opportunities shrink, what other groups do is bump down. You see, they bump other groups out and begin to do what? Take their place to maintain their survival. You're going to say, well, I'll just be nice and kind and die and starve out here or rob and kill. Or what? I've got to what? Get control of the assets, what? That I have what? Left. You see? And you have to tell the others, no personal feelings, you know, not everything against you, but I got to feed my children. I got to clothe my children. I got to take care of it. You don't have anything against that, do you? That's what you told me you were doing in the neighborhood, right? That you were only taking care of your kids, right? What does this mean then in the long run, ladies and gentlemen? That we as African people, given the deep restructuring that is going on in the world, are going to have to find another economic way out. We are going to have to create jobs. We're going to have to create an economic system. We're going to have to employ ourselves and create means of taking care of our people. That means then that we are going to first have to capture our economic infrastructure from other groups. Number one, because you must accumulate capital. And you must withdraw as much as possible of your capital from others in order to use it for yourself. And this goes on with groups all the time. Reagan did it. Reagan did it. Why do you think the poor got poorer and the rich got richer? They ran a game called supply side economics, which meant that if you give the people who have money more money, they will take the money and invest it and build factories and hire the people who don't. But we were put in a trick. Well, that's the supply side, you see. In other words, give it to people who got it, and they will invest it and create more. Well, it didn't work out that way, did it? So the laws were changed, and the system was restructured. This is what you call cutting. When jobs are cut, or when programs are cut, this isn't just a cutting. This means money is being what? Transferred. It is being moved from one group, or one set, into the hands of other sets. So this is what you call capital accumulation. The money that was once going to the poor and so forth now is redistributed it to the wealthy. Now the wealthy in their gracious manner were supposed to invest it and create jobs, but that wasn't what happened. They played shell games with each other and created paper wealth and so forth, and then sold the companies off and shipped the stuff out and became international citizens and left us in the lurch. Even the white is in the lurch. Everybody's in the lurch here, see? Now the black community then must accumulate capital so that it can invest in its own infrastructure, which means that it must redistribute its money and its wealth. It must take the money back and reduce the flow of money outward to other groups, accumulate it in itself, and invest it in itself so that it can create abundance for itself. The black community now must not lament being in the diaspora, but really see the diaspora as your most powerful economic instrument. You see, while we complain about global white supremacy and we complain about white imperialism, you must also recognize that white imperialism was in effect too a white diaspora. Am I getting through? In other words, it also spread white folk where? Around the world. It wasn't just a colonizing of African people. You had colonizers. And the colonizers came to what? Live in all major areas and cities and places around the world. Using their ethnicity, they created lines of what? Communications all around the world. They built what? Commercial what? Networks all around the world, huh? They traded with each other, what? All around the world. You understand what I'm saying? So they scattered around the world, but in maintaining their ethnic identity and interests, they were able to create a global economic, political, and military system. Am I getting through to you? I know I'm keeping you a little late, but I just want to talk to you a little bit. Now then, and this is happening to the Japanese, and this is happening to Koreans and others. As they move into a global market, they disperse what? Globally. And they maintain, and they have their what? Center cities, central banking areas, and all of these means by which they maintain a global system, you see. Now, African Americans, you have great possibilities here, you see. We are spread from one end of America to the other. We're in all of these major cities. We already have national networks set up right now in the names of churches and organizations. And again, looking at the Nation of Islam and other groups. And so you have already national what? Administrative networks. But you see, when you think of, until you think of nation, you can't use them, see? But when you begin to recognize, you should look then at the possibility of developing trade networks across this country, of developing and setting up a distribution system across this country. We should make all of these supermarkets and others make room on their shelves for black manufactured products. Because now once you've got a distribution network set up, and you have markets all across the country, you have a basis for manufacturing, you see, and distribution in the country. If you organize these things now, you can deal with the Caribbean as an African-American nation, you see, and you can deal with the African continent as an African-American nation. With your accumulated wealth and power and economic organization, you can now begin to have a major impact on U.S. foreign policy and transform that policy in a way that it stimulates the economic development of African nations. You can make African nations now receive favored nation treatment. You see, lower tariffs against African manufactured products. Create a market for the sale of African manufactured products within this country, you see. See, people will tell you that it's because the Japanese were so industrious, or because they had such great family values, or because they were Confucians, and all of this is the reason why now they're an economic power in the world. Well, if that's the case, why weren't they an economic power 2,000 years ago? It takes more than that. Why did they only become an economic power basically after World War II? Because of the nature of what? The relationship that this country what? Had with them. A relationship that was fundamentally different from the relationship it has with African nations. Why is Korea going today, ladies and gentlemen? Because they sent black men over there to die in the soil of Korea and to protect Korea as an investment market for white men. And black men and women over there today still protecting South Korea as a market for investment for white men and white people. And yet it's black lives that were given and black tax money that executed that war over there and that built this investment possibility. It is black taxes that maintains the ships and the airfields and the other things that also preserve what? The investment possibilities for private capital. And so you have public capital being spent in the interest of private wealth. And then they try to tell you in America that you have no right to ask for anything from the U.S. government. You understand? And yet this government took its industrial genius, its organization and so forth, and taught the Koreans industrial organization and development. Japan's highest economic award, an industrial award, is named after an American, the Walter Deming Prize, a very prestigious prize. Why? Because it was Walter Deming who basically taught the Japanese industrial organization and production. Do you understand what I'm saying? Huh? In other words, it was what? The relationship of the United States government and the type of relationship that this government had with Japan, opening its markets, lending its money, rebuilding its infrastructure, protecting it against the incursion of Russians and other people, providing a nuclear umbrella and all of this for the Japanese. And then they're going to tell you that they're ahead because they have family values. You're out of your mind. And then they're going to make, and by implication, try to tell you that the Africans don't, that the Africans are lazy, that the Africans are miseducated, that the Africans are this, and the Africans are that. Come on, don't believe that mess. It is a result of the fact of U.S. policy, which means then that the African American, which I believe is the central principle to the advancement of African people the world over, must organize economically so that we can organize politically. Open these markets up to African manufacturing the world over, so that the Africans in the diaspora in Africa, in the Caribbean, and other places can have places and markets for the selling of their products. Am I making myself clear? Who Asians are relating to whom? Asians, and building an Asian realm. The Latinos are building a Latino realm. The Mexicans and other Latinos now are taking up the American coast, right from California, right around the rims of Southwest America, right on through what? Florida. Because of what? They're getting ready to become the main exporters and importers of what? Latin American products, and be the controllers of Latin American trade. Before you know anything as African people, we will be locked in completely from every coast in America. You see, and we had better move in Alabama, in the coast of Mississippi, in Georgia, and Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, and keep some of that stuff so that we can engage in Atlantic trade with our people, so that we can be in control of African products that move out of here and African products that move in here. If not, we shall be doomed to destruction by this system. Crisis is opportunity. Racial identity, cultural identity is the means by which African people will reclaim their own.